The world sees the icon, the force of nature on screen, the woman who once terrified audiences with a single stare and made millions cry with just one line of dialogue. But time changes the shape of every life, even the ones we think we know best. At around 77, Kathy Bates stands at a place few could have predicted with certainty. Her name still carries weight, but her days no longer move at the frantic pace of red carpets and relentless filming schedules. The image the public holds and the quiet reality behind it do not always match. Between what is remembered and what is lived, there is a gap that most people never see. That gap is not made of scandal or spectacle. It is made of memory, endurance, loneliness, reinvention, and the slow passing of years that does not ask for permission.
Once, she was everywhere.
Her presence filled movie screens, award stages, late-night interviews, and cultural conversations. Then, gradually, the noise softened. The world turned its attention to younger faces and newer stories, as it always does. Yet she remained, moving through life in her own way, carrying with her everything she had been and everything she had survived. Long before her name appeared on marquees and award envelopes, Kathy Bates was simply a child in Memphis, Tennessee, born on June 28, 1948, into a world that made no special promises about stardom. Her father, Bertie Bates, was a mechanical engineer, steady and practical, while her mother, Erna Lee, was a homemaker who later became a journalist. It was a household grounded in routine and responsibility, not glamour or performance. Memphis in the 1950s was a place shaped by heat, tradition, church bells, music drifting through open windows, and social lines that were rigid and deeply felt. It was not a city built to nurture Hollywood dreams. It was a place where people worked, endured, and expected children to do the same. Kathy grew up in that atmosphere, observant and sensitive, learning early how to read rooms and notice the unspoken emotions in others. Those quiet observations would later become the foundation of her acting, though no one could have known that at the time. She was not the child everyone watched. She was not the loudest voice in the room. She was thoughtful, sometimes shy, and deeply curious about people. Stories fascinated her. The idea that someone could step into another life and feel what they felt stirred something inside her that she could not yet explain. It was not a grand declaration of destiny. It was a subtle pull. School years passed with the usual mix of awkward moments, friendships that faded, quiet victories, and private disappointments. Kathy did not grow up thinking of herself as conventionally beautiful or particularly special. What she did have was persistence, the kind that grows quietly in people who do not expect doors to open easily for them. That trait would shape her entire future. When she left Memphis to attend Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, she studied theater, not because it promised fame, but because it felt necessary. She graduated in 1969 with a degree in theater, carrying with her a hunger for performance and very little sense of how difficult the road ahead would be. The world she was stepping into did not reward women who looked like her easily. It did not wait patiently for late bloomers. It did not slow down for anyone. New York City was her next destination, a place that welcomes dreams and grinds them down with equal intensity. The young Kathy Bates arrived without wealth, without powerful connections, and without any guarantee that her education would translate into opportunity. She worked odd jobs to survive. She auditioned endlessly. She faced rejection so often that it became routine. Years passed with little recognition and fewer rewards, yet she stayed. Those early years were not the romantic struggle people like to imagine in hindsight. They were exhausting, discouraging, and financially uncertain. There were nights when she questioned herself, mornings when the future felt impossibly distant, and stretches of time when no one outside of a small theater community knew her name. The success that would one day define her public image was nowhere in sight. What existed instead was discipline. What existed instead was endurance. What existed instead was a woman teaching herself how to survive disappointment without surrendering to it. She was not chasing applause then. She was chasing the chance to work, to perform, to belong somewhere in a world that had not yet made space for her. By the time the world would come to know her face, decades would have passed since that girl left Memphis with little more than a degree and a quiet determination. And that long stretch of obscurity, failure, persistence, and quiet learning would shape her just as much as any award ever would. New York did not greet Kathy Bates with open arms. It tested her instead. The city was loud, crowded, relentless, and indifferent to dreams, and she was just one more young performer trying to survive inside it. The sidewalks were filled with people who hoped to be seen, and most of them were not. She learned quickly that talent alone did not guarantee a future. It only bought her the chance to keep trying. Her earliest years in the city were shaped by small roles and long waits. She worked in the theater, especially in off-Broadway productions, where the pay was low and the effort was immense. Some nights she performed for tiny audiences. Some nights the seats were barely half full.
Applause was brief. Money was scarce.
Yet the work mattered to her, because it was real, and it was hers. In 1971, she received her first small film credit in Taking Off, directed by Milos Forman. It was not a breakthrough. It did not change her life overnight. Most people who watched the film never noticed her. But it mattered to her because it meant she had crossed a threshold. She was no longer only a stage actress struggling in anonymity. She was now part of film, even if in the smallest way. The 1970s and 1980s passed with stubborn rhythm.
She acted in plays. She took supporting roles. She auditioned constantly.
She was rejected far more often than she was accepted. Each rejection carried its own quiet message about how the industry saw her. She was not the ingenue. She was not the obvious star. She did not fit into the narrow definitions of beauty that ruled casting offices at the time. Yet the theater community began to recognize something fierce in her. Directors trusted her with difficult roles. Writers saw that she could carry pain, humor, menace, and vulnerability at the same time.
She won a few stage awards.
She earned respect in artistic circles even when money remained uncertain. Still, outside of those circles, she remained unknown. Years passed like this.
A decade. Then nearly 2.
For many people, that kind of waiting would have felt like failure. For Kathy Bates, it became a test of identity. Was she an actress because the world called her one, or because she could not imagine being anything else? The answer revealed itself in the way she kept working long after the dream of fame had grown faint. There were moments of doubt that stayed private. There were nights when she went home exhausted, unsure if she would ever reach the place she quietly hoped to stand. There were moments when she had to look at her reflection and make peace with the faces Hollywood usually ignored.
Through it all, she stayed.
By the late 1980s, she had built a life of work without reward on a public scale.
Few people knew her name.
Fewer still could have predicted what would happen next. The years of invisibility had trained her, hardened her, and given her the emotional range that only long struggle can create. What the world did not yet realize was that it had been waiting for her all along. In 1990, when Kathy Bates was in her early 40s, an age when many actresses were already being pushed aside by the industry, she was offered a role that would change her life completely. It was the character of Annie Wilkes in the film Misery, based on the novel by Stephen King. At the time, there was no guarantee that this role would make history. It was simply a part that demanded everything an actress could give. Annie Wilkes was not a gentle character. She was dangerous, unpredictable, controlling, wounded, and terrifyingly human. Playing her required courage. It required an actor willing to risk being hated, feared, misunderstood, and permanently associated with darkness. Kathy Bates did not hesitate. She had waited too long for an opportunity to hold back now. When the film was released, audiences were stunned.
Critics were stunned.
The industry was stunned. Her performance was not just memorable. It was overwhelming. With one role, she stepped out of anonymity and into permanent recognition. At the age of around 42, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. It was a triumph few had predicted and even fewer had witnessed before. That single night at the Oscars changed how the world saw her forever. The woman who had struggled for nearly 2 decades in near invisibility was now standing on the greatest stage in film, holding the highest honor her profession could offer. It was not a fairy tale rise. It was a late bloom that carried the full weight of everything she had endured. After Misery, roles began to come, but not in the usual way. Kathy Bates was never marketed as a traditional movie star. She was not offered roles built on glamour alone. Instead, she was offered complexity. She played women who were strong, broken, ruthless, loving, desperate, resilient, and real. She became known as a character actress, not in a diminishing sense, but in the most powerful sense of the word. She appeared in films like Fried Green Tomatoes, Dolores Claiborne, Titanic, and many others, each time reshaping herself into someone entirely new. Audiences did not watch her for beauty. They watched her because she was truth on screen. That truth was sometimes brutal, sometimes tender, sometimes unsettling, but it was always honest. She did not try to fit into Hollywood's expectations. She did not reshape herself to become more palatable. She allowed her presence, her voice, her body, and her emotional depth to speak as they were. In doing so, she created space for other performers who had also felt unseen. Yet success did not suddenly erase the years she had spent waiting. Fame came, but it came with weight. The industry still judged. The industry still narrowed its vision with age. And behind the applause, there remained a woman who understood better than most how quickly attention could fade. She had reached a peak, but the climb had taken something from her. The recognition was real. The joy was real. The pressure was real too. And quietly, beneath the celebration, the long story of endurance continued. After the breakthrough of Misery, the industry finally knew her name, but fame did not wrap itself around Kathy Bates like armor. It offered opportunity, not protection. The roles that followed were rich and varied, and she approached each one with the same seriousness she had carried into tiny theater productions years earlier. She appeared in films that would become cultural landmarks, including Fried Green Tomatoes, Dolores Claiborne, Primary Colors, and later Titanic. Each performance deepened her reputation as an actress who could carry enormous emotional weight without losing control. On television, she found another powerful space to work. Her appearances drew attention not because of glamour, but because of credibility. When she stepped into a character, audiences believed her. She became someone directors relied on when they needed truth rather than surface polish.
Awards followed.
Industry respect followed. Yet the cost of being different never disappeared. Behind the scenes, the same silent boundaries remained. She was often cast as the outsider, the hardened woman, the strange one, the antagonist, the mother who carried pain in her eyes. Rarely was she allowed softness without struggle. Rarely was she permitted to simply exist on screen without explaining her presence through suffering or severity. Over time, this created its own quiet wound. Hollywood still did not know what to do with women who aged without fitting into beauty's narrow frame. Even after winning an Oscar, Kathy Bates was never insulated from that reality. As the years passed, roles came more slowly. Scripts arrived with smaller emotional landscapes. The industry spoke endlessly about diversity, yet still struggled to imagine women growing older with dignity. While the public saw success, something else was unfolding in her private life. Health, the one thing neither talent nor fame can command, began to slip beyond her control. In 2003, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. The news arrived not as a dramatic moment, but as a quiet, shattering truth that rearranged her entire future in a single instant. She faced treatment with the same fierce discipline she had brought to her career. Surgery, recovery, fear, uncertainty, and the strange loneliness that often accompanies serious illness became part of her daily reality.
She survived.
The cancer was treated. The world saw her return to work.
Applause resumed.
But survival left marks that applause could not erase. Years later, in 2012, another blow arrived. This time it was breast cancer. The decision that followed was not easy or symbolic. It was deeply physical and deeply personal. She chose to undergo a double mastectomy.
It saved her life.
It also changed her relationship with her body forever. After surgery, she developed lymphedema, a chronic and incurable condition that causes dangerous swelling and requires lifelong care. There was no cure waiting at the end of the road. There was only management, vigilance, and the constant awareness that her body would never fully return to what it had been. It was a souvenir she never asked for, one she would carry into the rest of her life. Through all of this, the public saw fragments.
A headline here.
A brief interview there. What it did not always see was the daily weight of living in a body that had been altered by survival. The pain did not dominate her identity, but it followed her quietly. It reshaped how she moved, how she worked, and how she saw herself when no one else was watching. Surviving cancer did not end Kathy Bates's struggle with her physical health. In many ways, it only changed its shape. After years of treatment, recovery, emotional stress, and limitations caused by lymphedema, her body began to carry visible traces of what she had endured.
Weight accumulated.
Fatigue lingered. Movement became more difficult than it once had been. For a long time, the world looked at her and saw only surface change.
It made assumptions.
It whispered judgments. It applied its usual quiet cruelty to a body that no longer fit expectation. What it did not see was how survival rewires a person's relationship with control. When the body becomes a battlefield, protection often replaces appearance. In 2017, she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This diagnosis did not arrive as a punishment. It arrived as a warning. It was the moment when she realized that endurance alone was no longer enough. Strength now required intentional change. She did not chase transformation out of vanity. She chased it out of necessity. Slowly, over years rather than months, she began to alter how she lived.
She changed how she ate. She changed how she moved.
She changed how she listened to her body instead of fighting it. The process was quiet, unglamorous, and private. Over 6 to 7 years, she lost roughly 100 pounds. There was no miracle diet. There was no single turning point celebrated on magazine covers. There was only consistency, discipline, and the daily choice to keep going even when progress felt invisible. As the weight fell away, something else returned. Mobility returned. Energy returned. A sense of physical freedom returned that she had not felt in decades. She spoke later about seeing parts of her body again that she had not seen since she was young. The moment was not triumphant in a cinematic way.
It was soft. It was gentle.
It was deeply emotional. It felt like meeting an old version of herself that she had thought was gone forever. Yet even as her health improved, the past did not disappear. Lymphedema remained. Scars remained. The memory of fear remained. Healing did not arrive as a clean ending. It arrived as a complicated ongoing relationship with survival. Through all of this, she continued working when she could. She continued showing up. She continued carrying both strength and vulnerability inside the same body. The world often celebrates transformation as a single victory. For her, it was a long conversation with herself that never truly ended. By the time she reached her mid-70s, she had survived illness twice, reshaped her physical life, and lived through decades of an industry that rarely made room for women to age fully in the light. And yet, something unexpected was still waiting for her. By the time Kathy Bates reached her mid-70s, she had already lived several lifetimes inside one career. She had known obscurity, sudden fame, enduring respect, illness, survival, withdrawal, and quiet reinvention. To the outside world, it may have looked like her most powerful chapters were already written.
To her, something still felt unfinished.
For a long stretch of time, the phone rang less often.
Scripts slowed.
Opportunities narrowed in subtle but unmistakable ways. This was not because her talent had faded. It was because the industry had quietly turned its gaze elsewhere, as it so often does when women grow older. She noticed the shift not with bitterness, but with a calm awareness that came from having watched this pattern repeat across generations. She later spoke about how women her age often become invisible in Hollywood, not through cruelty alone, but through quiet neglect. The roles thin out. The stories shrink. The camera turns away. For someone who had waited decades to be seen in the first place, that second vanishing carried its own strange irony. Then, in 2024, something unexpected happened. She was offered the lead role in a reboot of the classic series Matlock. At 76 years old, she was not being asked to play a background figure or a symbolic elder. She was being asked to carry the story. The offer itself felt radical in an industry that rarely centers women of her age. Her decision to accept the role was not driven by ego. It was driven by meaning. She recognized that this role represented visibility not just for her, but for countless women watching from the sidelines of their own lives. She understood what it meant to feel unseen. She had lived that feeling in different forms for decades. When she stepped onto the set of Matlock, she did not arrive as someone chasing youth. She arrived as someone carrying experience, scars, discipline, and truth. The performance that followed surprised many who had underestimated her quiet return. Critics responded with admiration. Audiences responded with warmth. The industry responded with a kind of startled respect. The success of the series was not loud in a sensational way.
It was steady. It was grounded. It felt earned.
Viewers did not see an older actress trying to reclaim the past. They saw a woman fully inhabiting the present. The response was not built on nostalgia. It was built on recognition. For Kathy Bates, this return did not feel like a comeback in the traditional sense. It felt like a continuation of something that had never fully ended, only softened under the weight of time. She was not stepping back into the light to prove anything. She was stepping into it because she still belonged there. In 2025, at around 77 years old, Kathy Bates reached a milestone that quietly rewrote history. She became the oldest nominee ever for the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series for her role in Matlock. The record itself was symbolic. It spoke not only to her endurance, but to how long it had taken the industry to truly acknowledge women at this stage of life in leading roles. Shortly after, she won the Critics' Choice Television Award for Best Actress in a Drama Series for the same role. The applause returned, not in a nostalgic echo of past fame, but in recognition of present excellence. Her work was not being celebrated because of what she once was. It was being celebrated because of what she still was. Yet even as recognition grew, the conversation around her success carried complicated undertones. Some hailed her return as inspiring and overdue. Others quietly framed it as an exception rather than a shift. The same industry that praised her also revealed, through its language, how rare such opportunities still were for women her age. Kathy Bates understood this better than anyone. She did not cling to the illusion that ageism had vanished overnight. She knew it was still woven into casting decisions, marketing strategies, and cultural expectations. The spotlight had returned to her, but she remained aware of how easily it could move on again. Internally, she admitted to still wrestling with invisibility, even in moments of recognition. Years of being overlooked do not disappear the moment applause resumes. They linger in memory, in instinct, in the quiet calculations a person makes about how long attention might last this time. Standing in that dual space of honor and uncertainty, she did not speak as someone intoxicated by validation. She spoke as someone who had learned how fragile it could be. She accepted the awards with gratitude, but without illusion. She had already seen how swiftly the world could turn away. For the public, these moments felt triumphant. For her, they felt layered. They carried pride, relief, disbelief, and the faint ache of everything that had come before. Success at this age did not erase earlier losses. It simply stood beside them. What the world saw as a historic victory was, for her, another chapter in a life shaped by waiting, surviving, returning, and learning how to exist inside both celebration and uncertainty at the same time. Living with lymphedema is not dramatic in the way movies portray illness. There is no music swelling in the background. There is no sudden miracle. There is only routine, discipline, and a constant awareness of limitation. For Kathy Bates, this condition became part of her daily life after cancer treatment altered her lymphatic system permanently. It did not announce itself loudly. It settled in quietly and stayed. Swelling arrives without warning. Pain appears without ceremony. Compression sleeves become as ordinary as clothing. There are days when the body feels obedient and days when it feels like it belongs to someone else entirely. There are risks that never completely disappear, including infection, injury, and fatigue that does not always respond to rest. None of this shows up on red carpets. To live with this kind of condition is to become deeply aware of one's physical boundaries. It teaches patience in ways success never does. It forces adaptation rather than resistance. For someone whose career has depended on presence, stamina, and emotional control, the limitation of the body becomes a daily negotiation. Cancer did not only threaten her life. It reshaped how she saw herself inside that life. Survival brings gratitude, but it also brings a strange guilt, a quiet questioning of why one person remains while others do not. There are mornings when survival feels like a gift. There are nights when it feels heavy with unspoken memory. Her relationship with her own image changed as well. Weight gain after illness became both armor and accusation. It shielded her from vulnerability while also exposing her to judgment. She has spoken about how people treated her differently when she became thinner again, as if value had been restored alongside visibility. The realization was painful because it confirmed what she had always sensed about the world's conditional respect. As weight fell away, so did a version of herself that had learned to hide behind it. What remained was not youth, and not fragility either, but something more complex. What remained was a body shaped by time, illness, discipline, and survival. What remained was a woman who no longer had the energy to pretend for anyone's comfort. Fame did not protect her from loneliness. In some ways, it sharpened it. Being recognized everywhere does not mean being known. Being applauded does not mean being understood. There were years when she spoke openly about feeling invisible despite working steadily. It was a paradox the public rarely considers. Visibility on screen did not always translate into emotional presence in real life. The roles were powerful. The performances were celebrated. But when the work ended and the doors closed, the silence was real. That silence taught her who she was when no one was watching. People like to package legacies into clean phrases. They speak of resilience as if it is a single act. They speak of reinvention as if it is a moment rather than a lifetime. Kathy Bates's career does not fit neatly into those boxes. It stretches across decades shaped by struggle, surprise, recognition, neglect, illness, survival, and return. She stands as proof that greatness does not always arrive early. Sometimes it arrives after years of rejection. Sometimes it arrives after the world has already decided who it thinks you are. Sometimes it arrives when the body is tired and the spirit has learned caution. Her legacy is often framed around strength, and that framing is earned. She has confronted fear directly, both on screen and off. She has stepped into darkness as part of her art. She has faced mortality in real life. But strength alone does not explain the full truth. There is also exhaustion in her story. There is also vulnerability. There is also grief for the versions of herself that illness altered forever. There are unresolved spaces that no award can fill. There is the quiet loss of physical ease. There is the reality that time cannot be negotiated with. There is the industry's habit of celebrating women late and sparingly, as exceptions rather than standards. Even as she breaks records, she remains aware of how rare those moments still are for others like her. The public often sees the triumph without seeing the cost. It sees the comeback without seeing the years of waiting. It sees the smile without seeing the compression sleeve underneath the jacket. It sees the award stage without seeing the hospital room that came before it. What Kathy Bates represents now is not just talent or survival. She represents the long arc of a life lived without shortcuts. She represents the truth that meaning does not arrive fully formed. It accumulates through endurance, through loss, through refusal to disappear quietly. Her story challenges the culture that prefers youth without history and beauty without scar. It reminds that dignity deepens with time, and that relevance does not belong only to the young. Still, she does not stand above the contradictions of this world. She lives inside them like everyone else.